Welcome, dear listener, to something quite new. It's called Podtime Stories, and it's made just for you. Chronicles dark and grotty, the littler ear may find it too nasty, but you've nothing to fear. These tales, they seep out of a most twisted mind. It belongs to Luke Aldridge, and I know that you'll find that they tickle the brain and the soul in equal measure. Lurk deep down here for your listening pleasure. So come with me, friends, and we'll share this account. As some may make you think just a smallish amount. But if you are worried that this tale could be true, I'm sure that it's nonsense. Quite sure. Now, are you? Welcome to Podtime Stories.
Who Are You? Read by Neil Roberts, with music composed by Fiona Troon.
One fateful night when our tale is set, a story that's not designed to upset, or to startle, or scare you is not my intent. But scares sometimes happen, even if they're not meant. A day unexceptional, much like today, and that day turned to night, as is often the way. I popped on my PJs and went to the loo, and did all those pre-bedtime things that you do. I slipped into bed, and I snuggled deep down, cozy and warm, with no one around, except for the dog, who was snoring quite loudly and taking up most of the bed rather proudly. I lay on my side and let my thoughts drift, across magical lands, Macamoo, Ma, and Mift. My eyes, they grew heavy, and I let my lids close, and relaxed my body from hair down to toes. But what happened next chilled me down to the bone, a feeling so feely I had never known. That I could feel such things, not inside but out, something that now I would never doubt. Over my shoulder a voice spoke to me. The volume was pleasant, the level was wee, but it didn't appear to come from anyone. The voice didn't sound like my wife or my son, or daughters or neighbours, or one that I knew. I wondered, oh Doggles, did you hear it too? The voice itself came as quite the surprise, but what it did ask me brought tears to my eyes. Ruling out children or even the wife had given me quite the fright of my life. Alone in the room, just Doggles and I. Only one probable option appears to float by. That a spectre had visited me from somewhere else. Not the tooth fairy or elf on a shelf, but something had come from the great unbeknownst to pose me a question, and then leave me alonest. I lay wide awake, part in shock, part in fear, trying to make sense of what happened here. Why pick on me, ghost? Now what had I done? Was there deep meaning, or was it just fun? Eventually I managed to fall into slumber, but after a few hours of wondering if there was more to this nocturnal story, or would the wife enter to scenes rather gory? Nothing as drastic. I woke in the morn, the question still with me. I felt quite forlorn. Reflection suggested no harm was intended, but damage was done, and it had to be mended. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Indeed it. A simplish question, not that much thought needed, but dig past a name, or a title per se, and tunnel right down to the part that is way, way, way deeper than skin and than muscle than bone, to the part that speaks to you when you are alone. In this world, no, not that bit. It's deeper down still. It's deeper than memory, deeper than skill. Keep right on going till you feel like you'll pop Then keep on going, don't dare pause or stop. Turn left at that next bit and then take a right, dig out of the darkness and into the light, and there. You are you. The most youiest you ever made. Your core and your values and your you is laid, oh so vulnerable, like when you came into this world. It is you deep inside you, all squabbly and snarled. What happens if you dare to look deep in those eyes? What greets you may shock, or might even surprise. But you cannot avoid what you really are made of. The good bits, the bad bits, and what you're afraid of. We sat there a while, my you and my me. Cake was not offered, not one cup of tea. Had I got the wrong you? This did not seem to fit. I always give cake to the people I meet. A while went by, was it seconds or months, or maybe all Wednesday, or perhaps all flumps. But we spoke without uttering one single word. He did say nothing, but the message was heard. We said our goodbyes in a silent-y way. He put in some music, I think Marvin Gaye, and he bogled about as I started my journey back to myself, be it slimy and squirmy. I opened my eyes, and I felt quite refreshed. I didn't feel lonely and far less depressed. The question that caused me much worry and stress had been kindly answered. I mean, more or less. But what did my you tell me down in the depths? Once I had dug down and I took all those steps. Exactly the message that he gave to me. You want me to tell you? Just give it for free. What I was told I shall never share. What I was told shall stay deep, deep, deep down there. But if you feel ready to journey down too, just ask yourself this. Who are you?
Who Are You? Was written by me, Luke Aldridge. Read by Neil Roberts with music composed by Fiona Troon. The flute was played by Sandy Hay, violin by Diane Ludwig, bassoon by Fiona Troon, keyboards by Vato Kkemera, guitar by Paul Tomkins, bass by Andrew McKinney, finger clicks were Katherine Evans with drummy stuff by me. Sound production and general oral wizardry by Handsome Bob Field. The introduction was read by Neil Roberts. Saxophone and clarinet was played by Toby James. Guitar by Simon Coleman. Keys by 80s Dave Oliver. Bass by Andrew McKinney. The theme was written by me. I also played drums and stuff. The Podtime Stories logo was created by Martin Herity, and the pod was written and produced by me. Podtime Stories is a Papa Bear Chronicles production. Text and recording copyright Luke Aldridge 2024. The right of Luke Aldridge to be identified as the author of this work has been asserted by him in accordance with the Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988. All rights reserved. Hello, lovely listener. Hope all's well with you and yours. It's been a little while. My apologies that it has taken a while to get this podcast out, particularly to the people that were involved with playing on it and all that kind of lovely stuff. Life has gotten in the way, I'm afraid. It's just one of those things. So this is the second version of this story, as you know, the first being read by the fabulous Neil Roberts, and this version having a soundtrack by my old pal Fiona Troon. So I asked Fiona if she'd mind having a chat about her process in composing the soundtrack and her choices of what she did and all that kind of stuff. So what follows is a Zoom call between Fiona and I. Her home is up in Birmingham. I'm down in Buckinghamshire, and we had a little natter for about an hour. It gets a bit sweary, so if you do have some little ears with you, maybe don't play it while they're around. And also, if you're not particularly bothered about how people compose music to stuff, it's an hour's worth of us wanging on about that. So if that doesn't bore you to tears, I hope that you enjoy, and I hope that it's obvious there's a lot of love between Fiona and I. We've known each other for a very, very long time, and it was great to have her as part of this whole kind of project. So here's the chat I had with Fee, and I'll see you after for a little bit more waffle. Right then, dude. Let's talk about your soundtrack to this story then. So first of all, why did you bother? Why did we do this?
I don't know. I ask myself that question every day. Why did we? No, I'm kidding. Well, so to anyone who is listening, having known Luke Aldridge for a very, very, very long time, and knowing that both of our creative brains don't ever switch off, and it might be interesting to see how they interact between creative writing and music. Yeah, very dangerous, rather than in a sort of jazz quintet scenario, which was always the history that we had of working together. So Luke asked me to write a soundtrack for this podcast, and he sent me so in the series of podcasts there were, I think, 2 or 3 episodes that you sent me, weren't there?
Yeah, a few different stories. I can't remember if did you get the voice the voice recording? You did? Okay.
Yeah. And I really liked this one. I think I picked this one and possibly one other one, and we settled on this one. I liked the kind of in a way, the kind of interaction in this story between the ordinary everyday that the character is going through and the kind of otherworldly. I really like that. And I like the sort of slightly psychological aspect of it. So I really wanted to write a soundtrack for this story because I thought it was cool, and because it sort of lent itself to some of the different styles that I write in include slightly jazzy, slightly funky rhythm section with melodic stuff over it. And I really felt that this had that kind of feel to it. And I immediately thought, I could definitely write to that. And I could use that type of writing, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And this isn't the first time you've done sort of written to a story, is it? You had me read a bit of a poem that was part of a piece that you did as part of your masters.
Oh, do you mean the supernova?
Yes,
in the mirror
that's
thing?
the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Completely forgotten that I sent you that. Okay. Yeah. Which is way more abstract than this, and uses a poem that I wrote and then adapted, and then uses kind of almost like live theatre. So a parkour artist, electronics, and me playing the bassoon. So it was definitely a little bit more conceptual and abstract than this. But
the obvious choice, that classic lineup.
Yeah, the classic lineup for theatre pieces about astronomy and psychotherapy. It's a classic lineup. Who hasn't done that before? So it was really interesting doing that because it was trying to tie those very different things together and still give it like an arc or a progression that people who came to watch and hear it could follow. Was quite challenging, and that was what was nice about doing it. So I learned a lot from doing that. So no, it's not the first time that I've composed to a spoken narrative, but it's the first time I've composed to your spoken narrative, Luke. So that was nice. It was cool. Yeah. So.
And how's that different from just receiving a text? Because I guess Neil's lovely reading of it, which I'm a big fan of. He and his lovely tones in general. I guess you're writing to a performance of a thing, aren't you, rather than writing to to just text on a page?
Absolutely, it's completely different, because I think actually that's one thing I was thinking today. Excuse me, was that the way he reads it. So firstly, we should say about Neil, what's his background and his experience, so the listener knows why you asked him to do it.
So I've spoke about Neil a bit on other bits and pieces. He read the introduction. He was kind of the obvious choice for me to read the sort of title credits, sort of theme tune thing, in a vaguely Vincent Price, Addams Family thriller sort of vibe. Neil is someone that I met through the writing group that I joined in Tring. His background is in TV and film, and he does all sorts of bits and pieces, kind of dating back to the 90s. He was in sort of a few different Disney Channel series that you can find on YouTube. He was in a brilliantly dreadful TV movie of Marvel's Nick Fury with David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury, which is brilliantly dreadful, but I absolutely love it. He's also done some things that aren't rubbish as well. And
like this, for example, which
yeah, sure, yeah, like this. No, he's Neil's wonderful. He does a lot of kind of audio dramas, and I think it's Baldur's Gate is the big video game that he's a voice of a kind of a character in that. And no, he's a very seasoned jobbing actor, and that's what he's done his whole life. But he's also just a really lovely chap, and his stepson was at the same primary school as Orson. He's a couple of years older, and we would sort of bump into each other on the school run, and would just generally sort of meet up for a coffee here and there. Yeah, so no, he's a very lovely chap, and always very happy to help out.
So his experience, sorry, but that's what I was going to say is I think that's one of the reasons I chose this one was because I liked his voice, and I really the way, the arc and the inflection of his reading made the story really, I hate this word actually, it's a bit of a film music word, but it made the action pop, man. It made the story really vivid, and I like his voice. I like the range and tone of his voice, but it also, the way he reads it really brings out the meaning of the words, and it felt easy to write to his cadence as well.
Yep.
His cadence, gives them, obviously he's professional, but he gives the text loads of space as well as loads of arc and inflection.
Yeah.
And that made it easier for me to think rhythmically, I think, as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's definite kind of sections, aren't there, within the story, and I think that Neil really nails that. I think everyone that's read on the pod is brilliant, and I'm very grateful for their time and energy. But I think that I took a couple of stories that I think I could get away with, and then asked better people, good people, to read the stuff that I knew that was more complicated or less silly, and just had a bit more sort of depth to the story and the meaning, and needed a bit more, heft. Sure. Experience, training, blah blah blah.
Sure. So so what do we get to? So those are probably the reasons that I chose this one, and that's how it came about that we were doing this project together. So should I talk a little bit about the process of actually writing the actual score? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, because it's quite varied, isn't it? There's as we've said, there are quite a few sort of changes of gear or mood in both the text and how Neil has performed it. So how did you go about matching kind of ideas to his performance?
So what I tend to do if I'm writing to sort of an external narrative that isn't coming from me at the same time as I'm writing the music, excuse me, is I tend to listen to that if I have it as an audio, and I will literally write ideas down as I'm listening to it, and then I'll pause it. So I might just write words like, I don't know, I think so the very opening, the word that always keeps coming back to me is it has this sort of sense of swagger to it, which is quite important, because it's just like somebody going about their day-to-day business, but they're kind of upbeat and fine, and it's, they're in a good mood and they're in a good place. And I felt that I wanted that to have a bit of swagger, because the actual story goes quite deep. The person sort of looking at themselves, examining themselves. There's almost like a psychotherapeutic angle to it, maybe. But I didn't want it to be depressing. I wanted it to be sort of, I wanted it to have like a tension of like swagger and happiness with this kind of uncertainty and a tinge of sadness, So I was listening to it, and I tried to get a feel of like, for want of a better way of putting it, probably sounds very precocious, but what do you hear? when you listen to those words, what am I hearing? And I
Right.
definitely heard this kind of slight groove, swaggery groove rhythm section idea, which is actually very simple, but gives it a certain feel at the beginning. And I listened, sort of had the instrumentation in my head, very standard kind of rhythm section instrumentation. The offbeat thing with the acoustic guitar was cool. I thought I probably want an electric bass. It's that kind of sound. And then the other thing that was really key was having that kind of clavinova, that crunchy keyboard clavinova sound. I think I originally wrote the score on Sibelius, and I think it's called FM synth on Sibelius. But Vato, who played the keyboards, had his own sound that he used, and it's just absolutely perfect. Like in that low register, it's got swagger, it's got crunch, it's funky. But it was quite interesting using that at not like a fast tempo. So it's got real kind of, almost, swing's not the right word, but it's got a lilt to it that kind of makes gives the character some swagger, basically, which I really liked. But I also, as this person, sort of goes to bed and falls into like a dream state, the mood changes. And I wanted to have sort of a bit more flexibility in the sound. So flute, violin, bassoon, which I played myself. I think the interesting thing about bassoon in that lineup is that in the sort of tenor and upper register, bassoon is a very expressive cantabile instrument. But if you match it with like clavinova and drums and like electric guitar, it can have a really funky like low register to it, and I tried to exploit that a little bit. So it's funny how the instrument I played sat in the middle of those two almost opposites. So so
it's not a standard lineup, is it? It's kind of two worlds clashing,
which is basically typical of I mean, I think it's a standard lineup for me. That's the thing. Right. It's like but yeah, carry on. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I just it in terms of sort of the way that the bass and there's kind of backbeat elements on there, like the snare giving you the dum gat dum exactly would be sort of normal in a sort of pop funk rock tune. Drummer talking now, but that never happens in the scoring. That kind of 2 and 4, the backbeat is always in something that isn't sort of a cracky snare drum, isn't it? It's always in finger clicks, or as you say, the kind of the short sort of guitar sort of chords, or in what the keys are doing. Was there ever a temptation to go full kit, because it's a very percussion-y kit part? It's not a kit part.
Yeah, I think that was quite deliberate. I mean, when I do write stuff that's quite rhythm section-y, there's always a sort of decision to be made about how important are the drums, really? I mean, honestly, no, I'm kidding. Sorry. But yeah, there's always a decision to be made, because I think as soon as you put a groove on it in the drums, or just a beat that the drums are always playing, it changes the feel, and it can dominate. And I think I just felt that I wanted it to be really textural and quite atmospheric. So yeah, I also wanted to make sure that the different colors would come through. So I just didn't want to just slap a drum groove on it just for the sake of it. So does that answer that question, kind of?
Yeah, no, I think so. It's it's just not a sort of, it's not the go-to sort of use of a kit, is it?
Absolutely.
That's more of an observation than a good thing, bad thing. It's just interesting that it sort of that sort of groove comes from different parts.
Yeah, I suppose that's for me in composition. I suppose I definitely sit in between different musical worlds, and I think sometimes that happens. I think probably in a way your writing, your prose is so, for me, it has such a sense of theatre to it that I suppose that it's not a standard lineup, but it's not that different from what you might find in a pit lineup.
No,
so
sure.
For me, it's very theatrical in every way, and I wanted to make it visual. So like for the words, the reading, Neil's reading, and your words and the music to work together to create like a visual that people would get from it when they listen to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose that lineup is more, I think of it more as a pit lineup.
Sure.
It wouldn't be unusual to put those things together in a pit. situation. Yeah.
I guess we haven't talked about sort of your background particularly, have we? And just
How
growing
long have
up
you
in
got? Might be
the
another call, Luke.
the highlights. So you grew up in a house of musicians, didn't you? Mum and
I
dad
did.
being professional or classical orchestral musicians,
Mm.
brother being very much into the sort of the sort of rock and groove side of things, and you listen to a lot of big spread of lots of different things, interested in
Mm.
jazz as well as,
Mm.
things like Funkadelic and Parliament and
Mm. Mm.
yeah. How I guess you have, would it be fair to say that you, as a bassoonist, you've worked sort of predominantly in the orchestral
Yeah,
classical inverted commas sort of world, but you've definitely got, your head is very much in sort of lots of other
definitely.
different styles, and lots of different things interest you, and that kind of
Yeah,
comes out very much in how you compose.
absolutely. I think that's exactly it. And I think for me, yeah, I mean, basically what you've just said is I couldn't have put it better. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a situation where I was literally hearing every kind of music you could pretty
Hmm.
much imagine. There was this funny, do you remember Encarta before the internet? There was this like online dictionary called Encarta.
No,
Uh,
no. Explain.
okay, so back in the 90s, where before the internet occurred, there was this thing called sound bites. And I remember my dad was like a computer boffin and, and he got very excited. I know you didn't know my dad that well, but he was one of those people, if you've never met him, it's very difficult to describe him to you. But I'm giving you this as an example of the kind of environment that we grew up in and why I
Hmm.
think my brother and I, not many speak for him at all, but have become very much very creative because we were just surrounded by all these different musical, artistic, cultural things all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, so to give you an example of the parameters, there's two funny stories about my dad. So if you can imagine, we're all like 15, 16, 18, and our dad just came into the kitchen one day and he was just like really, really excited because he'd gone on to Encarta and he was one of, the first people we knew who had it.
Hmm.
And he was like, "It's amazing. If you come into my office, you can come and you can listen to a soundbite. Come and listen to it. Come." So we like went in. I can't remember if it was just me or if there was anybody else there. And he was listening to Mongolian throat singing on Encarta in like
Right.
1994. So there was that. And then there were other times where my dad would like go and have a bath and we'd be like, "What the fuck is he doing?" And he basically had candles on and he was listening to like Japanese whatever. I don't know what it was because he was obsessed with Japanese. I can't remember the name of the instrument. So there was that. And then there was, all the classical music that we were always hearing because of my parents' work. My mum would teach at home. There was my brother being a guitarist who basically kind of went through the entire arc of guitar, particularly
Yeah.
electric guitar, the whole 20th century, basically absorbing all those styles. And then there was my interest in jazz and Trev, I don't know if you knew, who played the didgeridoo, and we would all sit in his room and listen to like the stuff you've mentioned, Funkadelic, Parliament. I remembered the other day because I was reading somebody's PhD about John Zorn, and I remembered that Trev was really into John Zorn and like
Right.
just everything you can think of, really. So for me, I think it's, even though I went to music college and studied the bassoon, there's always been like this other side, which is very much open to multiple other styles. And I think that playing jazz piano, and we used to be in a quintet together. That's where the original writing came from for me.
Yeah.
That's when I started writing. I think naturally as a jazz musician, maybe particularly as a horn player or a pianist, you naturally get into writing because you're always comping and you're always
Yeah.
being creative in your like playing practice.
And I guess improvisation is kind of, very much a sort of a starting, sort of a kicking off point for that, isn't it? Of blowing
Yeah,
over, other people's song, other people's tunes and
yeah,
chord progressions and all that sort of thing. It's,
yeah,
very logical
yeah,
progression to then write your own.
yeah. So I think all of these things are just kind of in my head. And
Hmm.
sometimes they come out in different ways. And it's nice. It feels like a privilege. It's nice to be able to dip your toe into different things, but also hopefully in a coherent rather than tokenistic way. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
it comes out as a coherent piece of work, hopefully. So yeah.
It's funny you say about I have a dad Mongolian throat singing story as well. Because dad was very into music. He was not a musician. He was an artist and an educator, as you well know. And I remember sort of he would listen to very odd sort of radio programs, sort of, middle of the night, where it's probably him and sort of three other people, that ever heard them. And I think stuff like later with Jules Holland was really good at this kind of, when it started out. I mean, I don't know, it's just celebrated quite a big birthday, isn't it? I can't remember, it's like 20, 25, 30 years or whatever it is.
Right.
But there was definitely stuff that I discovered from that were kind of amazing bands, artists from other countries. And no, Dad was quite good at sort of discovering new stuff, and would order a CD or a tape from whatever it was called in Harrow, that big one that we always used to go to after during college hours, and
HMV?
no, it was I don't know, anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah, he was quite good at sort of finding new stuff, and was the same. He had I think he managed to find a metal band who had a throat singer as a front man.
Right.
I couldn't tell you, but Google, would answer that question.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's similar sort of thing of just having very weird stuff thrown in my general direction.
Yeah, no, I think the time and place that we grew up, you and I and my brother and all of us, we grew up primarily in the 90s in North London, which is the part of North London we grew up in is very, very multicultural.
Yeah.
We grew up at a time where, globalization was starting to really take hold. And what I mean by that is the influx and the encouragement of exploring different cultures was a part of how we grew up.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of inevitable, really, that your dad was listening to those things. And, I remember even at HSYM, which was where we went to music school, there was concerts with tabla players in them, and there was steel pans, and so I think it's kind of a mark of the environment we grew up in as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I don't think you had to go looking for
Exactly.
stuff that wasn't kind of, Caucasian, Western.
It was just there. It was just around
stuff.
you all the time. Yeah,
which is
exactly.
great, because it ends up sort of bleeding into what you're doing, and sort of checking out other stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Just simply it being kind of on your doorstep,
Absolutely.
rather than it being a kind of a conscious researching
That's
project.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you go about creating the moods that match the story, the kind of different changes of gear and all that kind of thing? Because there are, as we said, there are definite kind of sections, aren't there? And your score reflects that.
Yeah.
How do you use the different elements of the lineup?
So I don't know how other people do it, but I tend to work in Sibelius. And I don't always do that, but often if I'm writing parts that people need to play, I'll work in Sibelius. And what I'll tend to do is I'll get an idea. Sorry,
just for non-musicians, Sibelius is a score writing software that is kind of the sort of industry standard thing that we use. I don't use it for composition very often, but it's more of an arranging thing for me. But it basically plays back in a slightly, unless you upgrade everything, in a slightly terrible MIDI fashion, doesn't it? But it's really handy for being able to hear what you're doing. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and also no, that's okay. And also, so I suppose what composing to your writing is a little bit like composing to film in some ways, in that, but in Sibelius there's a feature where you can import a film and you can see the action, the screenplay, and you can line up a click with what's happening. So
right.
I sort of do that when I'm writing to words as well. So I will have an idea of the speed I want in my head when I'm listening to, in this case, Neil's voice. Yeah. And I will create a click, or I will get a metronome, and I will kind of line it up that way.
Right. So you're hitting certain beats, aren't you, at certain points, and you know your chunks of time, your different sections, and all that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think I also, when I was writing, going through the actual creative part, I would write down on the Sibelius score or in your audio, this is minute 6:35. Here's where the drums play or whatever, and then I would line up like a metronome track on Sibelius with that, and I would got a skeleton score eventually with the different speeds. And then there's a little bit of adjustment. Sometimes that's a bit too early, or that's a bit too late. But yeah, basically that's how I do it. And that works really well for me. And I think I think I did give everybody a click as well, didn't I? So we gave the musicians an audio with a click, so they knew exactly where to play, which I think we're going to come to this, but when you're recording remotely, so everybody kind of recorded at home and sent us their tracks. Yeah. Literally the only way you're going to get it together is if you have some kind of click.
Yeah.
And even then, it's not always easy.
No. And in terms of kind of creating the sort of the styles and the different moods, how do you go about deciding what works, what fits, what, how do you get your ideas in line? Does the performance, do the words, is it Neil's voice? What kind of triggers?
I don't know.
Sort of how long is a piece of string sort of question, isn't it? I know, but how do you find that it works?
So
what did you do?
Yeah, so we've already talked about using a click to line everything up, which I think is essential working in that sort of scenario where everybody's recording remotely. But also, I think for me, tempo and color are really, really important. So, if you want something to have a bit of a swagger, you don't want it to be too fast or too slow. It's got it's that kind of feel, like that kind of very sort of slightly lazy but confident feel, that swagger. Okay. So that will helped me anyway, get the tempo, and then the instrumentation for that type of thing I've already talked about. It's basically a rhythm section instrumentation. But then also, that's one of the reasons I included like flute, bassoon, violin, and also both electric and acoustic guitar, because all of those instruments in a kind of orchestral setting, they're quite flexible. So wind instruments, obviously we make the sounds by creating an air column, and it either just goes through a tube or goes through a reed or whatever. There's a flexibility in that allowed me to, sorry, this is very wanky the way I'm talking, but it allowed me to, so wanky, God, there's a flexibility in the air column, Luke. That's why I used it. Exactly.
I want to know about the flexibility in the air column.
Thinking,
Thank you very much.
Shut up. Yeah. So yeah, but it's just that the flute high register is got that ethereal quality to it. The violin has a very sort of expressive quality. The bassoon, as we've already talked about, kind of sits in between those two. And then the contrast of the in the acoustic guitar stabs that we talked about with the fact that the electric guitar, somebody once pointed out to me, is a really expressive instrument. And I think that it's often overlooked especially in orchestral music. It's so expressive. You can do so much with the sound. You can bend it. There's so much choice with register as well. Yeah. And different sounds as well. So
I suppose it probably kind of carries a rocker sort of stereotype, doesn't it, as an instrument, in the same way that the kind of drum kit, bass guitar, kind of do as well. So it's I don't know, is it used much in contemporary? Obviously in soundtracks and as part of a rhythm section and that side of stuff, but is it used much in a orchestral?
I mean, there are certain composers. Setting? Yeah, there are certain composers who, broke those boundaries, particularly in the 90s, early 2000s. Composers like Andreessen and Turnage, obviously. Don't know if you know his work, but,
Yeah, he was quite big on saxophones, wasn't he?
Way too big.
Which traditionally aren't orchestral instruments, are they? But, generally better sort of more widely seen in a big band or a jazz setting, but he kind of pretty much always writes for them in sort of big orchestral stuff.
I think with saxophone, it's a really interesting thing. It's like you were saying about electric guitar. The saxophone, a lot of people will associate it with jazz or like just really bad 80s pop music that has like a really growly saxophone solo in it, which I dig. It's cool. But I think with what were we talking about? Oh yeah,
I think the term is yacht rock.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it. Okay. I don't know what that even means. Is it anything to do with yuppies? Do you remember yuppies?
Yeah, it's generally played in loafers, I think. And
I see. Okay.
And you're supposed to play it on your yacht. Michael McDonald, I think, unfortunately falls into that category because he's wonderful. But yeah, I think in a stylistic term,
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Michael, if you're listening to
So,
this. I know he's a fan.
uh but going back to saxophone, so specifically saxophone is quite an interesting one because, it comes up in Prokofiev scores.
Yeah.
It comes up in a couple of Ravel scores, but in a very sort of, it's classical saxophone put in an orchestra and might have a solo kind of thing.
And it tends to be a doubler, doesn't it? It tends to be that sort of a clarinetist.
No, no,
Oh, really?
actually,
No, no, that's
no, it
something
tends
else.
to be a specialist. It tends to be a specialist,
Right.
yeah. But you don't, you've got, I think people have these ideas about a saxophone is used in jazz or it's used in
Yeah.
that way but certain composers have started to break out of those confines, like
Yeah.
Andreessen's a really good example. But yeah, so I suppose what's nice for me is kind of almost having like an unfiltered view of just the sound. It's
Yeah.
like
Rather than the
I wanted
setting.
an electric, yeah, I wanted an electric guitar because I want that sound and it's that type of electric guitar sound because
Yeah.
it will fit really well with this. But so those upper instruments, the wind and electric guitar, just lent a lot of flexibility in sound and atmosphere and register. So I think that kind of answers your question about how I wrote for the mood, does it?
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
And how does that all relate to the story? Something that I'm interested in is how much did you listen to the story on its own? How did you listen through to it a bunch of times
Yeah.
in just a kind of full story? How many times did you then sort of I know this is a little while ago, but as
Yeah.
a sort of a general guide, or do you kind of was the first time you sat down and listened to it with a notebook in your hand?
No, I listened to it. I can't remember exactly how many times, but definitely a few times in its entirety before I
Right.
started writing anything. And I just, because I wanted to get an idea for want of a better word, plot. It's not exactly a plot, but the arc of the story
Yeah.
and the emotional content of the story, and the mood. And then when I started to have ideas, then I just started to note them down and sketch.
Right.
So I hope that for me, I think that makes it a more organic process. So it's like whatever's coming to you that you think will work, just start jotting that down, and you may or may not
Yeah.
use it. But it's literally it's like almost an intuitive reaction to what you're hearing.
And does that happen in a chronological start to finish, or is it just that you might have, an idea for a bit at the end or a bit in the middle?
Yeah, it depends. I think in this instance it was pretty chronological because I was
Right.
following an arc. But I
Yeah.
think, it could happen that you listen to the whole thing and on the third or fourth listen, right, I've got an idea, I better start writing it down. And as you're listening, you pause it and you write a bit down for the first bit, and then you think, and that end bit, maybe this would work well at the end. I think I, not always, but sometimes have an idea of the form and how the form is going to develop in my head, even before I know exactly what the instrumentational material will be.
Right.
And I think in this instance, that's almost like an obvious thing to say because the form is already predetermined because we've
Sure.
got the form of the story. So, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Is there anything else you want to talk about the sort of process and the general sort of shaping the sounds to the story, or should we talk about who, what, and how lovely people got involved?
I think the only thing I want to say is that I hope that the listener gets a sense of. Firstly, I think it's kind of interesting because when you're listening to the work of two people who've known each other for a long time, I wonder if this is kind of a weird thing to say, but if listening to it cold, people will get an impression of how well we know each other and how long we've been friends. I wonder if that would come through at all,
Yeah,
like
I'd not
in
thought
the
of that.
work. Yeah. But I hope that the combination of all of our work, so you, me, Neil, Bob Field, who's our sound technician, and all of the musicians who we'll mention in a minute, I hope they get a sense of journey, like, and being sort of transported into like this dreamscape, because that's kind of what I was aiming for. But yeah, that's the only thing I would want to say. That's kind of like my gift to the work. It's my gift to the work. Don't make that face at me.
I can't help it because it's such
Yeah,
a
I know.
pretentious,
I know, it was really
dreadfully
pretentious. Yeah, I
pretentious
know.
thing to say. But no, I totally agree. I mean, it's I kind of slightly balk at that
I
kind
know
of
what you mean. Yeah, yeah,
and it's something that I don't find particularly comfortable in a kind of I think that as I get more experienced as a writer and I've started doing sort of a few, sort of spoken word poetry performances and stuff like that, um, I don't know. There's definitely a side of it that is that's quite hippie, quite wishy-washy, quite airy-fairy for,
Self-indulgent,
yes,
self-indulgent.
for
Yeah, I know what you
want of
mean. Yeah,
a better, none of those are particularly
absolutely.
descriptive, but hopefully, yourself and anyone listening kind of gets what I mean. Um,
Wanky. You wanted to say wanky, didn't you? I
I
always
did.
bring
I
the tone
did.
down. Yeah,
Yeah, good for
I know what you
you.
mean.
I
It is a bit
expect
wanky.
nothing. Expect nothing less.
Thank God.
Um,
Thank God. Yeah.
but yeah, there's definitely hopefully a decent piece of writing starts in a place and ends up somewhere different, and hopefully that
Mm.
person, the character, you always kind of are juggling what they want versus what they need, and you're always juggling kind of a sort of development, a start point and an end
Character.
point, all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So yeah, it's I
But
mean,
can I say something about that? So I
yeah,
think
yeah,
yeah, you write because you want to write and you need to write, and that's something that you love doing, and
yeah,
that's the same for me. But there is an element, I think, with this project, because it's bedtime stories for adults, there is an element of like, without meaning to sound like I'm commodifying it, there's an element of this will be received by the listener as an experience.
yeah.
So
Hopefully,
you know what I mean? So it's not like when I'm saying like this is my gift to the world, it's not like in that kind of way. It's just more like I hope that in some way it's kind of got it's an inner journey, but it's also a little bit comforting because there's kind of almost a happy ending at the end. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
yeah. I don't think that there's too many of the things that I write that are massively kind of serious or dark, or if it's a
Yeah.
dark subject,
Yeah.
I hope that there's a lightness to it. I think that the only thing that I would maybe point a finger at that doesn't do that is the Monster Returns, which is
Mm.
one of the pod episodes, which deals with a heavy subject and yeah, it doesn't necessarily have kind of a lightness or a sort of happy ending.
Mm.
I don't think it goes into it's suggestive rather than graphic.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Um, but I think that that's fairly unusual for me. I think that you can kind of tell that I generally sit with a Dr. Seuss hat on as
Yeah,
ideas kind of
exactly. Yeah.
come to me and as I sort of scribble them down. Um,
But it's nice to feel that um just that somebody would enjoy listening to it and go through that
yeah,
journey.
yeah,
That's
and
nice.
yeah, because I mean, otherwise, you know, you're
Yeah,
giving up sort of 5, 10, half an hour's worth of your life.
yeah,
You don't want it to be dragging you down. Hopefully, it's a light, silly, enjoyable distraction
exactly.
from how rubbish everything else is
And I
that we.
do feel like there's a slight, you talk about Dr. Zeus, but I do feel like there's a slight Spike Milligan element in there,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
which I like. I really like that kind of slightly comedic, but can be also quite dark writing. I like it. I think it's quite real. And yeah, it's like those
cool.
polarities. It's nice.
Yeah,
Focused. Yeah.
cool. Thank you, dude.
Yeah.
So who have we got?
So
This was sort of
yeah,
a combination of you and I drawing on lovely people that we know, and they all did the recording from home,
yeah,
as when you're talking about remotely,
yeah.
that everyone sort of recorded in the comfort of their own home.
So we did talk about, didn't we, about the possibility of getting a load of people in a studio and doing it that way, but that wasn't
Yeah,
really possible just because it was over the Christmas break and nobody would be available. So we did
yeah,
it remotely. So I think you said you want to go through it in score order. So should we go from top
yeah.
to bottom?
Kind of makes sense. So, and it's kind of that way. It's kind of split into sort of four of your lovely people, and then two or three of mine. So,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
five of your lovely people. Yeah. So, um, go for it. You want to start?
So on flute, we've got Sandy Hay. Sandy is a Birmingham-based flute player who I've known for years. We studied together as I was an undergraduate. He was a postgraduate. Lovely guy. Runs Birmingham Flute Choir, and lives in the area and teaches. And we should also say, actually, all of these people gave their time for free.
Yep.
And I'm just so, so grateful, because I know, the kind of conversation about whether you'll work for free, which I have with people a lot. There are some things I will do musically for free if it's helping somebody's studies or helping somebody develop their career, or if it's helping me develop my career. But yeah, asking people to do things for free, like, we understand the conflict around that, and we're just really so
definitely
grateful for everybody who contributed. So yeah, so Sandy Hay on flute. Violin is somebody called Diane Ludwig, who I've worked with before. Again, a Birmingham-based violinist and Alexander technique teacher, by the way.
And that's where you are, isn't it, Birmingham?
Yeah.
These days.
Yeah, it's a Brum thing. I'm in Brum. And
studied undergrad and then have come back, haven't you? And sort of a few years ago.
Yeah, I did a big loop. Did a massive loop around the country.
Via Chile.
Yeah, via Chile. Brief pit stop. Myself on bassoon, and then on keys. So Vato, I think the surname is pronounced Kkemera. Wonderful musician, brilliant composer. I met Vato on the master's course at RBC a couple of years ago. He plays 2 keyboard tracks. So he plays the Clavinova sound keyboard, and he also plays piano on it. And then we get to guitar, so you can take over.
Yeah, guitar is Paul Tomkins, who's a chap that I have sort of known sort of vaguely for a while before Daisy, my daughter, moved up to secondary school, and he turned out to be her head of music, which was a slightly sort of peculiar one, walking into year 7 parents' evening, and all right, Paul. But I'd kind of known Paul through his lovely wife Nat, who she was the music coordinator at Norbury Primary School, which is where I was at primary. No, she's not that old. Norbury Primary School, where I was at, and then, sorry, Nat, and then my nephew Charlie, who is now 21. He was at Norbury, and I was running a community band for adults, and we went and played, I think, their year 6 leavers thing, and Nat was there, and we kind of roped her in as a clarinetist, and she was in the band for a bit, and Paul would come along to gigs. I never had reason to ask him to come and play, but then saw him at the kind of Rittmersworth High concerts and stuff. And he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife of plays drums and plays guitar, plays keys, bass, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And sort of, I think every concert I saw, he would sort of, pick up something that I'd not seen him play on before, because, you sort of have to fill the gaps, don't you? So, yeah.
Guitar,
Paul,
that's good.
Yeah, Paul was very...
guitar parts, didn't he?
He did, yeah, electric and acoustic. And I kind of had a feeling that he would have the means to do it all from home, or be able to kind of, pinch the gear from school. So, so Paul was good enough to step in and take on the guitar stuff. The bass guitar is Andrew McKinney. He's a very old mate of mine. We were at London College of Music together, and met when we were, I don't know, sort of 19 or 20. He was studying at what was then Bass Tech, which was sort of up the road in Acton, and LCM was in Ealing. And the guy who was the sort of head of jazz at LCM also taught up at Acton. So he would often sort of drag along bass players, guitarists that he had come into contact with, sometimes drummers as well, up at tech studios, tech schools, and they would come and sit in on the big band. They tended not to last very long, because there weren't too many players whose reading was their kind of strongest point.
Yeah.
And I don't think a drummer ever came back after the first rehearsal. I think Eddie Harvey, who was the guy who ran it, was notoriously tough.
Yeah, I remember talking about him at the time. Yeah.
I think after I'd done my first half term, I'd been the longest serving LCM big band drummer for as long as anyone could remember. Yeah, and but a hell of a musician, and his experience and his knowledge and stuff. The problem was that he knew exactly what he wanted, and drums is. I mean, every element of a big band is so important, but drums is
Yeah.
everything comes from that chair. So unless you're,
Yeah.
I mean, I took a lot of abuse. I'm not saying that I was brilliant and that he didn't have anything to say to me for, I took weekly abuse and was, I think, either too stupid or too thick-skinned to. No, I just saw the value of getting hacked to pieces on a weekly basis. Of right, okay, I've got stuff to work on.
Yeah.
So yeah, Andy McKinney and I, we played in various bits and pieces. We did a jazz trio together. He played bass in Funky Monkey, my funk band that I started when we were at college. That kind of went on for years and years and years. Andy now, he runs. I think it's now Tech Music School, which is what used to be Bass Tech. He runs the BA course there. He also plays in James Taylor Quartet, which were
Does he? Oh, I didn't know that.
massive,
Yeah.
acid jazz band in the 90s and
Yeah, back in
still
the
going
90s.
strong.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, they gig in London and around the country a lot, but there are certain countries like Italy is massive on like instrumental jazz funk.
Yeah.
They're always over there. But he does a lot of sort of West End stuff, sort of a lot of depths, and he played bass for Jarvis Cocker, and then he's currently doing a lot of touring with Pulp at the moment. Of kind of, I think that they kind of got back together certain members of the Pulp band, and they got in new guys to fill the gaps. So Pulp is something Andy does.
So we got flute, violin, myself on bassoon, Vato on keys. I should also say about Vato, I don't think he'd mind me saying that. So he's, I think, half Georgian. It could be completely Georgian. I can't remember. Has been in the UK for a long time, and a lot of his music, if you have the chance, when you look at the listings for this podcast, to check out some of Vato's music, you will be impressed. Like he brings Georgian music into his writing quite a lot. He's an incredibly gifted jazz pianist, and he also did an English, I think it was English Lit, it could just be English degree at Birmingham University before he came and did his masters. So he brings poetry and spoken word.
Very annoying being good at two things.
I know, it's really unfair, isn't it? I know,
Yeah.
God, some people. But anyway, so he's a really interesting artist, musician, who is worth checking out. So we've kind of gone through all of those. And there's some bloke on drums. I don't know who he was. Who was he?
He was cheap. Let's move on.
So cheap. But he did more than drums. Didn't he do something else as well on the score?
Yeah, there was call for wind sounds and
At the beginning.
yeah, and I found myself blowing down a clingfilm tube into a plastic beaker, which happened to be sitting on the table in the studio. And so there are 4 tracks. Myself and Bob, fabulous Bob Field, who is general audio wizard and lovely human being who is taking care of all of the sort of
Thank
the
you, Bob.
general. Yes, we love you,
Yeah.
but well, I love
Thanks,
you, Bob.
He doesn't love you. He's bullshitting. We love you. We do love you, and we appreciate so much all the time you put in to this incredibly elongated project that we've all been
Indeed.
working on.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the most ambitious of the pod episodes, and it's taken a while for it to all sort of come together. But everything else, soundtrack wise, was basically one person either composing and then performing, or kind of coming up with sort of an improvised, improvised score and performing that. Whereas this, was kind of having to herd cats a bit, wasn't it, with lots of different players on,
But so part of that was that you were saying that it's annoying when people are good at 2 things, but you're really good at blowing down a cling film tube into a paper cup.
Into a plastic cup. Yeah. So I am available
skills.
for sessions, weddings, bar mitzvahs. If you need some added wind on any of your public events,
Tracks.
I'm very free and very cheap.
Adding weight.
Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
and
I
then
have played matchboxes and gravy tins and all sorts of random old crap as as a sort of a percussion-y person
yeah,
recording before, but this was yeah, a different
a whole different
avenue of
skill set.
ridiculousness.
Yeah, thanks for being willing. And actually, I was joking with Luke before we started this podcast about how it reminds me of a documentary I watched once about how the Daleks were made, not the actual Daleks themselves, but the series of the Daleks back in the 80s, and
Hmm.
how, on the cheap BBC sets, sorry, BBC, not being rude or anything, but anyway, on the
Oh,
cheap sets,
famously,
famously
kind of
budget, right? So
cardboard sets and all that sort of stuff, isn't it?
yeah, so like polystyrene Daleks that are
Yeah.
apparently going to kill you. How one of the sound effects was made in the studio by, I can't even remember what the effect was, but it sounds really good on the screenplay, the final screenplay. But it was made by like rubbing a BBC teacup polystyrene on the desk, and it just made this kind of sound. It's just that's how high tech we are. That's the kind of level we're working at. Just so the listener knows.
I think if you check out any, I mean, I follow sort of various sort of Foley artists and bits and pieces on on the socials, and there's always stuff that pops up of how brilliant sounds are the most random,
Yeah,
just lo-fi nonsense.
yeah. Mistakes
Uh,
are there are no mistakes.
no, absolutely, and nothing is
None.
too cheap and nothing is too ridiculous. You stick it, bung a bit of compression, a bit of reverb on it, and it comes
Exactly.
out very different.
So
Um,
we got that, and then we had somebody clicking their fingers on the offbeats, which is by far the most important
Clearly.
instrumentation in the whole score. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much, Katherine Evans, for doing that for us. Really appreciate it. Catherine is a very, very interesting musician. She writes music and has also studied music tech. She did a master's in music tech in Birmingham, and that's where I know her from. She takes mainly medieval pieces of music and sort of for want of a better way of putting it, revamps them with like film and sometimes also new sonics. So she's really worth checking out. Is Catherine Christie Evans. Look her up. She's done some really cool shit. If you like medieval songs in derelict churches or with Japanese dance, it's very cool.
So performance events rather than sort of filming
Films,
stuff.
short films.
So projecting
She also has a
films
band.
and
She has a band called Dystopia Gently. That several of my friends are in with her, which is very different to the other work that she does that I've just described. But yeah, her sort of short music videos tend to be sort of medieval music. She's singing an incredible soprano voice, plays lute and a combination of other instruments, and does it with cross-disciplinary people like dancers, and also sometimes creates other sonics to go with us. She's a really interesting artist, worth checking out Catherine's work.
cool. I will add links to all the lovely people.
She also clicks her fingers really well. Another person who could do two things. Jesus.
Yeah,
I know,
it's
right?
annoying, isn't it? Yes, links to all the lovely people that we've talked about will be on the website. So please do have a little look and check out what they're up to. They don't just play this nonsense for free; they actually do other stuff too.
Do stuff. They do shit.
Yeah. So
True.
what else? What else have we got to talk about, Fee? Anything you would like to add?
I mean, I
It's
still want to talk about your new haircut. I don't know how relevant it
God.
is.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
it's so
I've
swish.
got a
Check out
haircut.
Luke's new hair. It's pretty good. It's
You will
pretty.
never see it out from underneath a hat. So good luck with that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and no, it was an absolute pleasure. Doing all of the stuff that I've done with the lovely people that have been involved in this has been so lovely to kind of be able to approach old and not so old mates, and the whole thing of matching up certain stories with certain people in sometimes a very obvious way, and sometimes a way that would be more interesting just to kind of see what happened.
Yeah, definitely.
I think everything that I got back. I mean, I didn't, very deliberately didn't approach this in having a kind of hand in the music. I
Yeah.
wanted to very much sort of do this as sort of the writing element of it being,
Yeah.
what I was focusing on, and leaving other people to do the music stuff. So, it was I think every single soundtrack that I got back was interesting and surprising, all in delightful and wonderful ways.
And so individual. They're all so different, aren't they? Yeah,
They
it's
are,
really,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that each one does exactly what I hoped they would do, and then they kind of they add another layer to to the story and the words, and really kind of elevate what's there, and obviously the readers as well. Those performances are sort of a big a big sort of just getting stuff off the page and into the gobs of people who do it for a living is so such a different
Such a different
process, a
thing.
different experience. So
And has I know we need to wrap it up, but just quickly, has so I can ask you a question about the writing, because
yeah.
we basically talked about the music. The process of writing these podcast episodes, has that been cathartic for you, would you say?
Yeah, I don't think that there were too many. I'm just trying to think back over them. I think that they were all, not all of them. I think they were mostly things that I had already written.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of the of doing the pod in the first place, because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy, it's asking kind of a lot of other people and time and energy of other people, and particularly lovely Bob Field,
Mm.
handsome Bob Field. Yeah, I mean, it was I think when you write a a story or a poem or whatever, it just kind of sits in a notebook or on a hard drive unless you get off your ass and you do something with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's partly having done 10 podcast episodes with this being the 11th, a kind of a second version of the story already went out as just a story, and then obviously this is going out as the story soundtrack. Yeah, I think kind of I've started doing a few sort of performance things of going out and reading my own poetry. I don't necessarily think that I'm the best person to be reading it, but it's the least amount of hassle.
Yeah.
Because I've loved doing the podcast and I've loved the end results. I think that hearing them read by brilliant people and hearing what lovely musicians add to it as well has been wonderful.
Quite special, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I yeah, I'm it's a tricky one. Would I do a second season of it? Is kind of something that has been sort of rattling around in my head.
Yeah.
I think that what I've done instead is put my poetry stuff, of which I've been writing an awful lot more recently, into a book, collected them in a book, and I'm aiming to get those out probably beginning of next year, 2026, accompanied by a lot of the artwork from my mum and dad. But yes, it's been great hearing it, and just sort of presenting it in a in a way that is accessible, rather than having to kind of sort of go and shout stories at people in the street, which is what I was doing before.
Yeah, and I think our new virtual world, it's not new anymore, it's just that I'm really old, but our new virtual world where, we're all so digitally connected, it's been quite interesting to work on this project with you. And we also did a podcast episode before about grief and loss, which some people might find interesting / helpful to listen to. But working in this way, working remotely, has been really interesting. And I think that I really enjoy experimenting with this different cross-disciplinary work.
Yeah.
Because in a way you always write like yourself, but that can mean, as a composer, but that can mean lots of different things depending on what you're working with. And it's just, I think for me, the biggest thing I've got out of this project, and also certain other projects that I've done, is that I really feel like it's almost like a theatre vibe. It's like you're writing
Sure.
for a story, and the music is, it's kind of like a pit band vibe. And I really enjoyed that. So thanks very much for the opportunity. And again, thank you so much to everybody who supported us playing for this project. We really do appreciate you. And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the lovely people that from your end, particularly because Paul, I've known for a while, and Andy I've known for a million years. So yeah, to have for strangers to me, give up their time and energy to take on some random thing is obviously very grateful for them. I think that what would be interesting is that if I think what I'd do different if I were to do kind of another run would be to not write the stories first. I think it would. I think it'd be interesting to kind of to make partnerships with different people and sort of talk about, rather than giving people sort of 2 or 3 different options and then picking what they fancy doing, to kind of discuss stuff first and write to the interests or subjects or general leanings, or maybe deliberately go for something that was out of sort of our comfort zones.
That would be really interesting. Yeah,
could be an interesting thing to do.
That'd be very cool. Would you do, for example, a collaborative poetry project where you take a verse each and then compose to it? Something like that.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I think that, I guess the temptation with that would be to, if you're both writing, to both compose.
Yeah, that would be fun.
That would be a bizarre painting.
I know we'd have major arguments, but I'm not bothered about that.
Oh yeah, I think that's fine.
That's a
reason to do it, to try and come out the other end without killing each other.
It would be fun. That'd be really fun. We should do that. And you write a verse, I write a verse, and we just ping pong it. And then when we've got something coherent, write a score to it. And try not to kill each other.
No, I think that what you'd probably find is that most of the poem was about bums, and then
your part would be about bums.
Then all of my bits would be drum solos, and the bassoon would have rests.
So bassoon would be tacit on every one of your verses.
On every one of my bits, it'd be quite easy to tell whose was what.
That's it. I'm giving you cross-stick offbeats, and that's it. That's all you're doing in my one.
That's all I need. That's all I want.
All right. Well, I think we've covered everything. We've rambled on for a stupid amount of time again, but that's what we do.
That's all good. Well, thank you as always for your time and energy, and it was very lovely doing getting the chance to do a thing with you. I hope not the last time that we do something.
Yeah, no, totes,
something sort of interesting and creative together. I think there's, because it's worked well so far.
Yeah, it was good fun.
It just doesn't pay very well.
It doesn't pay well, but I mean, I won't mention anybody's mum, but anyway, she doesn't pay.
No, probably best.
All right, that's enough of that. Right, I'm going.
All right, nice.
See you. Lots of love. See you soon. Bye.
And to you. So there we are, my natter with the lovely fee. Hope you enjoyed that. So that's it. That's this this little selection of stories all tied up. And as I say, apologies to those involved in this last one for it taking longer than originally planned. Will there be more, I hear you cry? Don't know. We shall see. So in the last year or whatever it is, I've been busy putting together a poetry collection, a couple of kids' sci-fi books and stuff. So there's plenty of stories. I guess it just depends if the lovely Uncle Bob can put up with me for a second season. We shall see. So as always, my love and gratitude to handsome Bob Field. Always a pleasure, my dear boy, never a chore. And really just a big thanks to everyone that's been involved in the pod. Anyone that's read a story, composed or performed some music, put together a fabulous piece of artwork. And I must thank Simon Chilvers for his image that goes with this pod as well. Thank you, Simon. Very much appreciated. And lastly, thanks to you, the lovely listeners, for putting up with us and taking your time and energy to check some of this stuff out. I hope that you've enjoyed it. So if you found your way into this podcast through either Fiona or one of the performers on this particular episode, feel free to check out the other stuff that's there. You've got 10 other episodes. And as always, if you feel like you've got the time to like and share and write a review or all of that stuff, that really helps us be more visible on, algorithms and all that sort of stuff. So it just remains for me to say, sleep tight and don't let the pod bugs bite.